There is a pill that millions of people over 50 take regularly, some every single night, that research has directly linked to an increased risk of dementia. And the most alarming part? It is sitting in medicine cabinets right now, often without a prescription, considered so routine that most people never think twice about it. Most people assume that if a medication is available without a prescription, it must be safe for long-term use. That assumption feels reasonable. It feels logical. But here is what the research is now telling us very clearly. Some of the most commonly used over-the-counter and prescription medications taken by people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s are quietly interfering with brain chemistry in ways that accumulate over time. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but steadily, silently, in the background. In the same way that rust quietly weakens a bridge long before anyone notices the damage from the outside. If you take a pill for sleep, for allergies, for bladder control, for anxiety, or for heartburn, this video is one you genuinely cannot afford to skip. Maybe you have been taking a small sleep tablet for years. Not every night, just when you cannot wind down. Or perhaps you keep an allergy pill in your bag because you never know when your sinuses will flare up. Or your doctor prescribed something for your bladder a while back, and it works well, so you never questioned it. These feel like responsible, sensible choices. You are managing your symptoms. You are functioning. You are doing what you were told. And yet, you may have noticed something shifting. A name slipping your mind that used to come easily. A moment of confusion in a familiar place. A fogginess in the mornings that takes longer to lift than it used to. You chalked it up to age. Everyone does. But what if some of it was not age at all? What if it was something in that little pill you have been taking without a second thought for the past 3, 5, or 10 years? Here is what we are going to walk through today, in plain and simple language. First, we will look at how certain medications affect brain chemistry, and why the brains of people over 50 are particularly vulnerable to those effects. Then we will go through the specific categories of medications that research has flagged most consistently. We will look at the signs that a medication may be affecting your cognition right now, signs that many people mistake for normal aging. And then we will talk about the practical, reassuring steps you can take, including conversations to have with your doctor, safer alternatives that exist, and habits that actively protect your brain, regardless of what medications you are on. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which types of medications carry the strongest research-backed links to dementia risk. You will know how to recognize early signs that a medication may be affecting your brain. You will have a clear, calm framework for talking to your doctor about this, without anxiety and without feeling like you have to figure it out alone. And you will leave with practical tools for protecting your cognitive health starting today. This is empowering information, and it is yours. To understand why certain medications affect the brain the way they do, we need to start with one simple concept, and I promise this will be very easy to follow. Your brain is essentially a vast, intricate communication network. Billions of nerve cells constantly sending and receiving messages, controlling your memory, your focus, your mood, your movement, your sleep, and nearly every other function you rely on every day. These messages travel between nerve cells using chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. Think of them like postal workers, each one carrying a specific message to a specific address, keeping the entire system running smoothly. One of the most important of these chemical messengers, particularly for memory and learning, is called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter most directly involved in forming new memories, maintaining attention and focus, processing language, and supporting the kind of clear, sharp thinking that we associate with a healthy, well-functioning brain. When acetylcholine levels are healthy and the system works as it should, messages travel clearly, memories form reliably, and thinking feels fluid and accessible. Now, here is where the problem begins. There is an entire class of medications, both prescription and over-the-counter, that work by blocking the activity of acetylcholine in the brain and body. These medications are called anticholinergics. That word simply means against acetylcholine. They block its activity, often intentionally because in many cases, that blocking effect is what produces the desired result of the medication. dry up a runny nose, relax a spasming bladder, induce sleep, calm an upset stomach, reduce nausea. The anticholinergic effect is what gets the job done. But here is the consequence that decades of research have now made impossible to ignore. Every time one of these medications blocks acetylcholine activity in your body, it is also blocking it in your brain. And in the short term, that might feel like nothing more than a little morning grogginess or a slightly fuzzy memory after a night's sleep. But over months and years of consistent use, research shows something deeply concerning. The cumulative anticholinergic burden, the total load of these blocking effects building up over time, is directly associated with structural changes in the brain, including brain shrinkage in regions critical for memory, and a significantly elevated risk of developing dementia. One major long-term study tracked tens of thousands of older adults over many years and found that people who had taken high-burden anticholinergic medications consistently for 3 or more years had a risk of developing dementia that was between 50 and 75% higher than people who had not. That is not a minor statistical footnote. That is a finding that every person over 50 deserves to know about. Here is what matters most right now. This risk is not inevitable, and it is not irreversible in its early stages. Research shows that reducing anticholinergic burden, often simply by switching to a safer alternative, can meaningfully lower that risk when caught early enough. So which medications fall into this category? Because this is the part that genuinely surprises most people. These are not obscure drugs that most people have never heard of. These are medications that are considered completely routine, medications that are advertised on television, medications that sit on the shelves of every pharmacy without requiring any prescription whatsoever. The first and most important category is sleep aids. Many of the most widely used over-the-counter sleep tablets contain an antihistamine, most commonly one called diphenhydramine, as their active ingredient. This is the same ingredient found in most common allergy relief tablets and cold medicines. It makes you drowsy because it crosses into the brain and blocks acetylcholine activity. For a single occasional use, the risk is low. But research involving older adults who used these medications regularly, even just a few nights per week over a period of months, found measurable effects on memory and processing speed that were concerning enough to prompt major geriatric medical organizations to classify this ingredient as inappropriate for regular use in adults over 65. The second category is bladder control medications, drugs prescribed for what is often called an overactive bladder. These medications work specifically by blocking the nerve signals that cause the bladder to contract involuntarily. But those same signals use acetylcholine, and those same blocking effects extend to the brain. Research tracking older adults on these medications over extended periods found not only short-term cognitive effects like memory difficulty and confusion, but long-term associations with increased dementia risk that persisted even years after the medication was stopped, suggesting that the neurological impact accumulates in ways that do not simply disappear when the pill does. The third category is older antidepressants, specifically a class known as tricyclic antidepressants, which were widely prescribed for decades for depression, nerve pain, and sleep. These carry some of the highest anticholinergic activity of any commonly prescribed medications and are still in use today, often for reasons other than their original indication. The fourth category surprises almost everyone: anti-nausea and stomach-settling medications, including some commonly used for motion sickness and general digestive discomfort, contain significant anticholinergic activity and are often used casually and frequently without any awareness of this risk. Now, at this point, you might be feeling something between concern and confusion. Maybe you recognize one of these medications. Maybe you have been taking something in one of these categories for years. Before you spiral, stay right here, because the second half of this video is entirely about what you can do, what safer options exist, and how to have this conversation with your doctor calmly and effectively. But before we get to solutions, there is a second major category of medication that research has flagged for dementia risk, and it is equally important, equally common, and equally under-discussed. This category is benzodiazepines. These are prescription medications used primarily for anxiety and sleep, and they include some of the most widely prescribed drugs in the world. If you have ever been prescribed something for anxiety, for panic, for insomnia, or for muscle tension, particularly something described as fast-acting or as needed, there is a good chance it falls into this category. Benzodiazepines work by enhancing the activity of a calming neurotransmitter in the brain, producing effects of relaxation, reduced anxiety, and sedation. In the short term, and for acute, specific situations, they can be genuinely helpful. The problem, and research has documented this extensively, is what happens with long-term or regular use. Studies tracking older adults prescribed benzodiazepines over periods of 1 year or more have found associations with increased dementia risk ranging from 40 to 80% above baseline, depending on duration and dosage. The proposed mechanism involves changes to brain structures involved in memory formation and retrieval, changes that accumulate silently over time and may not be immediately obvious to the person taking the medication. One of the particularly concerning aspects of long-term benzodiazepine use is that the cognitive effects it produces, the memory lapses, the word-finding difficulties, the feeling of mental fog, closely mimic the early symptoms of dementia itself, which means many people attribute the medication's side effects to their age or to early cognitive decline, when the actual cause is the medication. There is also a well-documented rebound effect. When someone has taken benzodiazepines regularly for sleep or anxiety over a long period, and then tries to stop, the original symptoms return, often more intensely than before. This creates a cycle that can feel impossible to exit without professional guidance, which is precisely why having this conversation with your doctor is so important. Because there are structured, gentle, well-researched approaches to safely reducing these medications under supervision, with far better outcomes than stopping suddenly or continuing indefinitely. Here is something I want you to sit with for a moment. Think about a time in the last year when you walked into a room and completely forgot why you went there, or when a word you use all the time simply would not come, or when you read something and had to go back over it twice because it just didn't register the first time. Most of us file those moments away under just getting older. But have you ever wondered, genuinely wondered, whether something you are taking every day might be contributing to those moments? Leave a comment below and tell me, did any of the medications we mentioned today sound familiar to you? You do not need to share details. Just let me know if this hit close to home. Now, let's talk about what you can actually do, because this is where the video shifts from concerning to empowering. The first and most important step is to make a complete list of every medication you take, prescription and over-the-counter, regular and occasional. Include sleep tablets, allergy tablets, antacids, stomach settlers, anything for the bladder, anything for anxiety or mood, and any medication you take even just a few times a month. Many people, when they actually write this list out for the first time, are surprised by how many items are on it. Bring this list to your next doctor's appointment and ask one direct question. Do any of these medications have significant anticholinergic activity? And are there lower-risk alternatives we could consider? That question alone, asked calmly, prepared in advance, can open a conversation that changes the course of your cognitive health. Doctors genuinely appreciate when patients come prepared. It makes the appointment more productive and allows for more thoughtful, specific guidance. For many of the highest-risk medications, well-researched alternatives exist that accomplish the same therapeutic goal with significantly less cognitive impact. For overactive bladder, newer generation medications carry a much lower anticholinergic burden, and non-medication approaches, including targeted pelvic floor exercises and specific dietary adjustments, have strong research support and no cognitive side effects whatsoever. For sleep, a structured behavioral approach to improving sleep quality has been shown in research to outperform sleep medications in long-term outcomes, without any of the cognitive risks. It involves adjustments to sleep timing, light exposure, pre-sleep routine, and the sleeping environment, and it works better for lasting sleep quality than a pill that your brain increasingly depends on. For anxiety, research on structured breathing techniques, progressive muscle relaxation, and certain therapeutic approaches shows genuine effectiveness, often rivaling or exceeding medication for mild to moderate anxiety without the long-term risks. The second thing you can do, starting today, regardless of what medications you take, is actively support your brain's acetylcholine system through the choices you make every day. Research has identified several lifestyle factors that meaningfully protect cognitive function and support healthy neurotransmitter activity as we age. Consistent physical movement, particularly walking, increases blood flow to the brain and has been shown to promote the production of a substance that supports nerve cell health and repair. Even 30 minutes of gentle walking most days produces measurable improvements in memory and cognitive function over time, with effects that are visible on brain imaging. Deep, quality sleep, not just hours in bed, but true restorative sleep, is when your brain performs its most critical maintenance work. During deep sleep, your brain actively clears waste products that accumulate during the day, including proteins that have been implicated in Alzheimer's disease. Every night of genuinely restorative sleep is a night your brain spends protecting itself. Omega-3 fatty acids, found in fatty fish, walnuts, and flaxseed, have consistent research support for supporting brain cell membrane health and reducing neuroinflammation. B vitamins, particularly B12, B6, and folate, are essential for the biochemical pathways that produce and maintain neurotransmitters, including acetylcholine. Deficiencies in these vitamins, which become increasingly common as we age due to changes in absorption, are directly associated with accelerated cognitive decline. A simple blood test can tell you whether your levels are adequate. Social engagement and mental stimulation. Conversations, reading, learning new things, creative activities are among the most robustly supported protective factors for cognitive health in the research literature. They are not luxuries or pastimes. They are, quite literally, medicine for the aging brain. Your brain has a remarkable capacity to protect, repair, and adapt, even in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. Every step you take toward reducing unnecessary cognitive burden and supporting your brain's natural chemistry is a step that research confirms makes a real, measurable difference. There is one more area worth addressing, because it connects all of this together in a way that I think will help everything make more sense. Many people take sleep medications because they cannot sleep. They take anti-anxiety medications because they cannot manage their anxiety without them. They take bladder medications because nothing else seems to work. And these are real, valid, quality-of-life concerns. The goal here is never to dismiss those concerns or to suggest that you should simply stop taking medications that are helping you function. The goal is to ensure that the solution to one problem is not quietly creating a larger problem, and that you have the information to explore whether a safer path exists. Research has shown something important about the relationship between the conditions these medications treat and dementia risk itself. Poor sleep, independently of medication, is a risk factor for cognitive decline. Chronic anxiety, independently of medication, is associated with accelerated brain aging. And an untreated overactive bladder that disrupts sleep every night creates its own cognitive burden through sleep deprivation. So the answer is not simply stop the medication. The answer is address the underlying condition through the most effective, lowest risk approach available, and have that conversation with a doctor who has your full picture. What research tells us is that the combination of reducing high-burden medications where possible, replacing them with evidence-based alternatives where appropriate, and supporting overall brain health through sleep, movement, nutrition, and mental engagement. This combination produces outcomes that are genuinely better than medication alone. Not just for dementia risk, but for quality of life, energy, clarity of thinking, and the confidence that comes from feeling genuinely well in your own body and mind. You are not helpless in this. You are not at the mercy of a prescription pad. You are an informed person with the ability to ask the right questions, make thoughtful choices, and advocate for the kind of care that takes your long-term brain health as seriously as your short-term symptom relief. That is exactly what today's information equips you to do. The research is consistent on this. People who proactively review their medications with their doctor reduce unnecessary anticholinergic and sedative burden and adopt brain-supportive lifestyle habits show measurably better cognitive outcomes over time. You now have exactly the knowledge needed to start that process. Now I genuinely want to hear from you. After everything we covered today, did any of these medications sound familiar? Have you ever noticed foggy thinking or memory moments that you were not sure how to explain? Or maybe you have already had this conversation with your doctor and found a better alternative. Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else in this community needs to hear today. And if you know someone who takes a regular sleep tablet, or an anxiety medication, or something for their bladder, please share this video with them. Not to alarm them, but because they deserve to have this information. That is what this community is built on, people looking out for one another. If you are not subscribed yet, please do, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Every week, we cover exactly this kind of honest, research-grounded health information, made specifically for people who want to age well and live fully. Before we close, a gentle and important reminder. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only. Please never stop or change a medication without first speaking with your doctor. Every person's health situation is unique, and what is right for someone else may not be right for you. Bring today's information to your next appointment as a starting point for a thoughtful, informed conversation, not as a reason to act alone. Take good care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.